Okay, test 1, 2. All right, we got sound now. Okay, so we're ready to go. Oh my gosh, we're back in the jungle again. Yeah. All right, so if our audio issue is good, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors. This is a special meeting. We're trying out something new by adding a meeting to our monthly calendar of events, and hopefully, in order to get some more business done and get things moving along in the county. So, with that, if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we'll just go right into the meeting. So look to the clerk to go through our consent calendar. And before that, we can go through our public participation procedures.
In order to protect the public health and the safety of our Tuolumne County citizens, the Board of Supervisors meeting will be physically closed to the public. During this board meeting, citizens who wish to comment should be prepared to use a call-in line at 209-533-6581 to queue for verbal public comment. Public comment will be opened and closed individually for each agenda item listed below. If you wish to comment on a specific item, please call in when the board clerk has read the item. The chair will ask if there are any comments from the public, and at that time, your call will be taken in the order it has been received. The public comment time limit on each item is set for 3 minutes per speaker. The time limit does not apply to staff. Options for public access audio and video live streaming. The public will not have access for public comments through these media. These are available for audio and visual only. The Tuolumne County website, https://www.tuolumnecounty.ca.gov/745/board-meetings. Due to technical issues arising with the Granicus streaming system, we recommend the public view the board meeting via Zoom or Tuolumne Access Stream. Access Tuolumne County at www.accesstuolumne.org and click Watch Live and or Comcast Cable 8. Zoom webinar via computer at https://zoom.us/j/98737385155 and or call in at 1-669-900-9128 with webinar ID 987-3738-5155. Note, Zoom webinar services tend to have a reduced broadcasting delay in comparison to the access to the county and Access Tuolumne live streams and is suggested for closest to real-time viewing and listening. Important public notice: under the Governor's Executive Order N-2520, this meeting will allow members of the Board of Supervisors to participate by teleconference and under Order N-2920 accessibility requirements. If you need swift special assistance during the board meeting, please call 209-533-6581.
All right, thank you for that. We'll move on to consent. Items on consent calendar are considered to be routine and enacted by one motion. Any item may be removed for discussion and made part of the regular agenda at the request of a member of the board. An announcement shall be made after the consent calendar is read by the clerk and before action is taken on any item, that the public may address any item on said consent calendar. And Ms. Cunha, would you please read our consent calendar for today?
Number 1, adopting Resolution 2621, authorizing the renewal of investment authority to the treasurer, tax collector, and approving the Tuolumne County Statement of Investment Policy. Number 2, adopting Universal Resolution 2721, designating the county administrator, assistant county administrator, and deputy county administrator as authorized agents for grants received from the California Office of Emergency Services, specifically for fiscal year 20, fiscal year 21, and fiscal year 22 Homeland Security grants and emergency management performance grants. Number 3, approving Anaya Kirk as the alternate for the Golden State Finance Authority, replacing David Goldenberg.
Okay, would any board member like to pull an item for further discussion? Would any board member like to comment on the consent calendar? Okay, is there any public comment on the consent calendar? All right, we have the head shake. Okay, look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
And I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Kirk, second by Supervisor Kathleen Half. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. All right. Let's move on to our first, our only 9 a.m. appointment, shall we? Clerk, would you please read that appointment for us?
Update on the fiscal year 2021 budget and consideration of recommended budgetary adjustments. 4/5 vote required.
Okay, good morning. Can you guys hear me? Nope. Well, my light's on. Can you hear me now? Is that better? Okay. So good morning, Tracy Riggs, County Administrator, and Eric Earhart, I'm going to change his last name for him, Assistant County Administrator. So today we are before you with what we're calling a budget update. In the past, we would have done what would have been referred to as the mid-year budget. And because of various reasons, mostly related to the CARES Act, our numbers keep changing. And when we say that, Debbie has done an incredible amount of work in working with the grant guidance and then the needs of the departments as we were expending the CARES Act funding. And then we just see the American Rescue Plan. So what I wanted to do today was, the goal is to give your board an update as to how we are performing under the current budget. This budget update only takes us through March. It does not include anything after that date. Does not include the items you'll be considering today, later this morning, for concession restorations, and does not include the American Rescue Plan. So with that being said, a couple things. I want to make sure that that I say thank you to our department heads who first, Eric puts this out, department heads then work on the budget items. We work with them very closely. It's not just Eric who does this, but everyone in our office. And then, of course, we spend an incredible amount of time with Debbie, and she has been fantastic as we continue to say, okay, maybe we should switch and change these in the way that we're working with the funding that becomes available. And that's because not only do we have funding in the general fund, but there's also funding in, say, Health and Human Services. And so we're all working together to try and follow where the ball is rolling at the moment. And everyone has done a great job. They've been very, very responsive as we've continued to ask questions, or they ask us questions. Normally, your board would have heard this mid-year update in February or March, but because of the issues I just explained is why we're here in April. And when we talk about the American Rescue Plan, I know there's a lot of questions about the American Rescue Plan. There's a lot of components. I'm not sure if I should keep going or not. Okay, I just saw everything go off. So there are a lot of components to the American Rescue Plan. There is one large allocation of 10.5 million. That is what the federal guidance is telling us. When I say federal guidance, we only have very high level information right now. We don't have the actual guidance that tells us what's the expenditure period, where is any flexibility, what can or must the funds be spent on. So we continue to work with NACO. They're really on this. They're holding a lot of different webinars for staff to participate in. The other thing that the American Rescue Plan is providing for is the payment in lieu of taxes that counties who have a large percentage of public lands, that's a payment we receive that goes into the general fund. And the Secure Rural Schools, which is a payment that goes directly into the roads fund. Then there's also other components, broadband, infrastructure. So we are working and trying to watch, again, where's this bouncing ball going? And last week, I met with all of the department heads and gathered their input for that American Rescue Plan and the needs that are out there so that we can bring those to your board. And with that being said, Eric is going to take you through this memo, and we would encourage you to ask questions as we move through it, and we'll turn it over to Eric.
All right, good morning, board. So again, this is just a midway point for us to reconcile where we are as of today through March, but we will be back in the coming weeks multiple times for year end, as well as the recommended budget process. So there will be much more discussion to come. So backing up to the 2020-21 recommended budget, at that time as we were developing the budget, many of our bargaining groups agreed to a concession of about 6%. When they made this agreement, additional language was added stating if additional funding was identified, the county would consider restoring those concessions going forward. As we closed out the prior fiscal year through July and August, where we reconciled actual expenses to revenues, we found we had a higher than anticipated fund balance. And while fund balance should never be considered a revenue stream, it did provide your board the opportunity to reinstate some of those concessions, which was about 2% of salaries, depending on how it was made up. This was taken into account in the 2021 budget, and the way that we did that was we set aside $450,000 in contingencies to fund the salaries and benefits that we were anticipating would be coming in. So right now contingencies are at 1.1 million, and with what we know today in the budget, we've been able to restore those concessions without having to pull any money from concessions. So right now, contingencies. Right now the contingencies will stay at that 1.1 million. Through the budget process, we're able to identify opportunities and challenges, giving your board the opportunity to address those issues. A lot of the issues impacting this year's budget, both negative and positive, are a result of COVID-19. Some of those have been included in this budget, and we'll just kind of reiterate those going forward here, but some of them have not. Such as we saw an increase in sales tax. Our sales tax is anticipated coming about $400,000 higher than we originally budgeted. And this is due to an increase in online sales, as well as there was a recent lawsuit involving Wayfair and where the sales tax should actually be delivered. So that's anticipated to be about $400,000 higher. We're seeing an increase in home sales, people moving from those densely populated areas up to Tuolumne County. And so as a result, we are expecting about $210,000 more in property transfer tax, as well as an additional $103,000 in recording fees that's associated with that. We have an increase in state revenue of about $324,000 that we did not anticipate, and this is for the cost of housing state inmates, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we move forward. When this budget was developed, we were not able to record any revenue for the mock fire that happened. We can do that now. FEMA has advised us that they will reimburse 100% of the expenses, so that's $173,000 that was not included in the original budget. We have a decrease in travel and training equating to about $125,000 because staff has not been able to go to training as they would in normal years. Talk about staff. We've had numerous vacancies throughout the year, at one point reaching as high as 90 vacancies. So when we look at the adopted budget versus the budget we see today, there's a difference of about $700,000 in savings for the general fund alone. What was included as well in the budget was the decrease in TOT tax. And the prior fiscal year, prior to COVID-19, we saw about $4.8 million in TOT tax. And with the trend that was going, we would have, in a normal year, we would have anticipated about 5 million, but this year we've budgeted for and we should receive about $3 million. So about a $2,000 hit, $3 million, so about a $2 million hit there. And also, as previously stated, this budget does include about $4.9 million of CARES Act funding to address the impacts of COVID-19. So we'll go into those a little bit further in detail as we progress through here. We'll start with the general fund. And due to many of the highlighted impacts above, it is expected that the general fund will end much better than anticipated. While there are some individual cost centers that require an increase in appropriations, overall we're seeing a decrease in expenses and an increase in revenues, which will lead to a positive fund balance. Across all cost centers in the general fund, we should see a net savings of about $969,000 or almost $1 million. So before we get into the individual departments, I'll take a quick break in case anybody needs to recuse themselves.
Okay, well, thank you for the
Subtle hint.
indicator there. So at this time, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion because I am married to a Deputy Public Defender.
All right, so I guess we're going to jump to the public defender portion.
Correct. We'll jump right into the public defender. There is some action that we will ask your board to take specific to the public defender's office. Unfortunately, this year we've seen some extraordinary cases through the public defender's office that have led to some increased costs for witness and jury expenses. These are cases that we don't normally see. They're fairly horrific, but that has increased some of the expenses coming out of that cost center. We're also seeing an increase in salaries and benefits as part of COVID-19. We had some staff that was off. In order to keep those cases moving forward, part-time staff was brought in that was not originally budgeted for as well. Also, there's a proposal in here to reclassify the legal assistant to a legal office manager, working with our human resources director as well as the public defender, to determine that the individual has been working out of class and working in that higher classification, providing the much needed support that he needs in that office. Again, there's about six attorneys in that under the public defender's office and only 2 support staff, full-time support staff. And so these administrative support staff are crucial in their operations. So as a result, we are recommending the reclassification of the legal assistant to the legal office manager effective January 1st. She's been doing this job for a while. And this increase will be about $9,000 this year with an ongoing annual cost of about $18,000, just under $19,000. So with all of those increases, we would be asking your board to approve an increase in appropriations of about $56,000 and to reclassify the legal assistant to the legal office manager. Any questions on the public defender?
Any questions? Do we do public comment for this portion? Yes. Public comment? All right, no public comment. So we'll come back to the board. And does anybody want to make a motion for the requested action?
I'll move to approve the requested action of increasing appropriations by $56,000 and reclassify the legal assistant to legal office manager.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor? I have a motion by Kathleen, a second by Goldenberg. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So passes with 4 yeses and 1 abstained. Would he be abstained? He would be recused. So thank you. So 4-1. What's that? Recused. 1 recused. Okay. All right. We'll bring Supervisor Campbell back in. Your wife still has a job.
I'm sure she'll be happy about that.
All right.
Okay.
All right, very good. All right, so as we'll work through some of these departments, and not all departments will be mentioned here, only those where we're requesting your board to take action. So the first one will be the Office of Emergency Services under the County Administrator. When we put this budget together, we were originally anticipating the staff in this cost center spending more time working on grant-funded programs and being able to charge their time to those grants. However, with the extended period of COVID-19 and the health emergency, they spent more of their time working on COVID-19 itself and weren't able to charge that time back to those grants. So that's why we would be asking for an increase in appropriations for salaries and benefits, salaries of about $42,000 in this cost center. One of the positive things on this, though, that time they spent was spent working on the business assistance grants, and we were able to put $1.2 million of CARES Act funding back into the local business community. So that is a win there for us. So we'll move forward on to the Auditor Controller's Office.
So I just wanted to highlight that. So
Right.
$42,000, but for that $42,000, we got $1.2 million in CARES Act funding into the business community.
Correct.
So-
And that was a lot of work done by Jason in our office and Simi to manage those grants and get that money out into the community. So thank you to them. What's that? And Debbie's office as well. Sorry, I apologize. Speaking of Debbie's office, Auditor Controller's Office, in addition to the financial support that she provides for the county, she also issues passports, marriage certificates, and performs marriage ceremonies, and sometimes even down at the Sierra Conservation Center. However, with the restrictions in place on travel and gatherings, both of these life events have been drastically reduced and reducing the revenue coming into her cost center. In addition, we talked briefly about travel and training, how that's been impacted. The other impact we see with the reduction in travel and training is the reduced revenue we get from our credit card rebate program for when we use credit cards for employee travel. So we're expecting a decrease in revenue there as well, about $36,000. We are anticipating an increase in salaries and benefits due to partial concession restoration of about $25,000. So there are some other minor reductions in expenses, but overall we would be asking your board to approve an increase in appropriations of $23,400. Moving forward into the Assessor Recorder's Office. The Assessor Recorder's Office is requiring about a $17,000 increase in appropriations, and this is due primarily to a change in employee group insurance. When the adopted budget is created, it takes into account everybody's current enrollment status. Enrollment status can change halfway through the year, the fiscal year, so any changes there would impact it. But also, when we budget for vacant positions, those positions are budgeted at an employee plus one dependent, so any change or increase to that enrollment as we hire people will increase or change the employee group insurance cost for the county as well as the employee. So we have seen some changes there. The positive side is, again, like I mentioned earlier, there is an increase of about $103,000 in revenue for recording fees through the Assessor's Office, but we would only be asking at this time for your board to recognize $17,500 of it and increase the appropriations by $17,500. Our Archives Department has one employee, so the concession restorations is being seen there, and it's an increase of about $4,700 due to the restoration. However, in addition to storing county archives, we also store non-county archives, and so the revenue from that is anticipated to increase by about $5,000. So we would ask that your board approve an increase in appropriations of $4,700 and recognize the $5,000 in unanticipated revenue. Moving forward into the Elections Cost Center. So we had some additional unanticipated expenses with the elections, the last election, about $16,000 due to COVID-19. There's also the expected increase in cost for the pending special election that will be coming up as part of the fire parcel fee that has been proposed. The cost for this election is about $125,000. However, we are anticipating $20,000 coming back from the participating special districts. The county share would be about $105,000. We've also seen a slight increase in salaries and benefits as part of the concession restoration. And again, we anticipated this increase in concession restorations. So overall, we're requesting an increase in appropriations of $166,000. That and also recognizing the $20,000 in unanticipated revenue. So moving forward into information technology, IT is a crucial part of our county infrastructure, and this last year we've seen more staff working remotely and accessing the network remotely. So now more than ever, it's imperative that we ensure the continuity of operations and the security of our system. When we talk about the continuity of operations, many of our servers that we use are outdated, some 13 and 18 years old for IT technology that's extremely old. well beyond its life expectancy. So when we created this budget this year, the funds weren't there to replace these servers. Now we have an opportunity today with the savings we're anticipating to replace those servers, which would be an increase of about $172,000 in appropriations. In addition to the continuity of operations is the security. With more remote access to the network, there's a greater need to ensure the security of our system. So our IT director has mapped out a plan for increased system security, but that would take the purchase of a software subscription in the amount of $72,000 for the first year. So altogether, we would be looking for an increase of $230,000 in appropriations for the IT department specific to hardware and software. And again, this really is to ensure the security of our systems, making sure that we can continue to provide services to the community and keep our staff working. Any questions on anything so far?
Something that just came to mind with IT, with people working remotely and a lot of this due to COVID, is there any way to get any of these things covered by COVID-related funding? I know it's a big question, but
It's a big question. Again, we don't know what the American Rescue Plan is going to look like. So there's definitely options out there. But right now, with what we know today, the
Right.
CARES Act funding has been expended.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's that?
Can I answer that? Sure. We used a lot of the CARES Act money for IT to put up firewalls and do so. There was more than a couple $100,000 we've already spent in IT to advance our security. This is for some more servers and other things that will really make the county safer and better.
Cool.
But
So-
we have spent a lot of the
Good.
CARES money for
Cool.
in IT.
Good to know. That was my point. Thank you.
And I just had a question. $72,000, is that a yearly cost or?
That would be
is that
the
an
year.
ongoing cost?
That would be the first year subscription cost, initial setup, and I'll have to look. I can look back and get the ongoing annual cost for you as well.
Other questions?
I'll make a note and get back to you on that.
Just want to say to anybody watching the public, since this is specifically a pretty big allocation, one of the things we talked about at our board workshop and getting presentation from our IT director was the threat of potentially any type of ransomware attack, something that would lock the county out and hold everything hostage, could shut down operations and cost a lot more than this. So even though this is a lot of money, imagine your home PC and if it was not updated for 18 years, how secure your, I guess, Windows XP would be in the modern world right now from a lot of these, bad actors in the system. So even though it's a lot of money, this is really, I think, covering your data and covering ourselves and protecting ourselves. And thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to Public Works Survey GIS Department. This is one of the cost centers where we see a savings due to vacancies. It's been a position that's been challenging with many to hire. So we have a savings of about $21,000 in salaries and benefits. But again, with the increasing development and planning services, we have an increase of revenue of about $27,500. Combined together, we're going to see a net county savings of about $48,000, and we would just ask that your board recognize that $27,500 in unanticipated revenue. Again, the mock fire, when we built this budget, it did not accounted for most of the expenses, but did not account for the revenue because we didn't know at that time whether or not it would be reimbursed. So as we closed out the books on that, there was an additional $5,200 in expenses that we need to account for. So we would ask to increase appropriations by $5,200, but also recognize $173,000 in unanticipated revenue from FEMA as reimbursement for the cost of this fire. Next, we'll be moving into the Sheriff Coroner cost centers. I'll provide a brief summary up front just because the Sheriff Coroner cost center does account for about $16 million of the net county cost in the general fund. And this includes patrol operations, custody, dispatch, investigations, civil coroner operations, boat patrol, and court security. One of the things we try to do in all of our public safety departments is kind of project what the savings will be, because unfortunately, with public safety, there are work-related injuries, and we commonly refer to this as 4850, and this is the government code that defines leave provisions and the benefits public safety employees get when they're injured on duty. So each year we'll look at the prior year's history and try to anticipate what that savings may be going forward, and we put that into the budget. This year, throughout the sheriff's cost centers, we anticipated about $350,000 in savings, and 60% of that was credited to the sheriff coroner cost center and 40% to the jail. The smaller departments don't typically get that credit added into their budget because there's less employees there. So first, we'll talk about the sheriff coroner cost center itself. This includes patrol, investigations, civil coroner, and their admin services functions. The most significant change we see here is in salaries and benefits. As part of the original concessions, employees agreed to, in addition to the furlough time, was also a step and longevity increases were all frozen, meaning people were going to stay at the salary they were. When your board chose to reinstate part of those concessions, we also unfroze those steps and longevity. So those departments that had more people moving through the steps saw greater fiscal impact, and the sheriff's office has a significant number of people moving through those steps in his cost center. So as a result, we do see an increase in salaries and benefits for the sheriff coroner cost center. The other part of this was they had the 3 weeks of unpaid leave they had to take, plus another 80 hours of COVID leave that was given to them by the county. So altogether, they had 5 weeks of leave they have to take this year. And in normal years, because public safety departments cannot take holidays off, we have to keep the doors open. They get 13 floating holidays, and they can take those throughout the year as they choose. However, if they don't take those holidays, then they're cashed out throughout the year by the county to the employee, so they don't roll forward. As this cash out increases, so does the PERS cost, and so we see that here as well, because most people relied on those other 5 weeks as opposed to the holiday cash out. So that's where a majority of the increase comes from. The 4850 savings, we had originally budgeted for about $210,000 savings for 4850. In the sheriff coroner cost center itself, we're anticipating about $160,000, but that other $50,000 we'll be recognizing in the boat patrol department, which is much smaller and only has about 3.5 employees in it. So collectively, throughout all of his cost centers, he will hit the budgeted amount of about $350,000. So overall, staff is requesting an increase in appropriations of $361,000, but also recognize $57,000 in unanticipated revenue, and that comes from revenue we get from the Forest Service. They pay overtime for deputies to work contracts up in the Pinecrest area. We also have a state OHV grant that pays for their overtime. And also we were able to recognize $18,000 of revenue from the Butte Fire response from the Sheriff's Office. So that's where that comes from. Any questions on the Sheriff Coroner Cost Center before we get into the jail? All right, very good. Moving forward into the jail, the biggest impact we see here is the increase in revenue from the state and as well as the salary savings due to vacancies. This year, most of this year, the state stopped accepting new inmates into the prison systems to try to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. As a way to recognize the counties for holding on to those inmates, they did start paying a daily fee, and we see about an increase of about $324,000 in revenue from the state for providing services we were already providing. So we didn't have to do any additional work. These were services we were already providing, but we did have to house the state inmates, and the state did reimburse us for those costs. So we have no additional cost associated with that, but we do have the revenue coming in. They will see the savings of $140,000 and $4850. But we also, the other thing we do is because public safety positions as well as other departments sometimes have a hard time filling positions, so we try to estimate what the vacancy factor is, what we refer to, which is essentially a salary savings due to vacancies. So we had estimated about $56,000 in salary savings due to vacancies. However, that's going to be much higher as well. At this point, we're anticipating about a $214,000 savings due to vacancies, plus another $30,000 in savings because of reduced travel and training. So combined with the increased revenue, we're looking at a net savings to the county general fund of about $547,000. So we would ask that your board recognize the unanticipated revenue of $324,000 from the state of California. Court security. So the courts provide 100% reimbursement for the deputies that are the bailiffs in the courthouse. As the new courthouse is coming online and opening up, We've been training some new deputies to fill some positions in there. And so that's why we see the increase in appropriations of $68,000, but also recognizing the revenue coming from the courts to cover the cost of those employees. So we would ask that your board approve those actions as well. Collectively, throughout the Sheriff Coroner Cost Center, we're actually seeing a net savings of approximately $386,000 for this fiscal year. Again, the biggest part is coming from that unanticipated revenue from the state, as well as the salary savings from the jail. Any questions on any of the Sheriff Coroner Cost Centers? Very good. Probation Department, much like the Sheriff's Office, had a number of people moving through those steps. So when the concessions were partially restored, we see that impact hitting here as well, which is an increase of about $87,000 for salaries and benefits. Additional revenue was also received for AB 109 programs, which also comes with an increased expense of $143,000. So the total increase in appropriations between salary and benefits and the additional AB 109 expenses is $225,000, but we would ask that you recognize $127,000 in unanticipated revenue. And again, this is specific to AB 109 funds. Mudload Regional Juvenile Detention Center. Again, there's an anticipated increase in salaries and benefits due to the concession restorations of about $43,000. However, this is being offset by increased revenue of $98,000 from state realignment and other governmental sources. Those other governmental sources are the contracts we have with our neighboring counties for housing out-of-county juveniles. So together, those two combined make up about almost $98,000 in unanticipated revenue. Moving forward into the Community Development Department, the only action here that's being requested is a reclassification of the administrative assistant to administrative technician. Again, we've worked with our Community Development Department director as well as Human Resources Department and did determine that this individual has been working at a higher class, and so that we would ask that this individual be reclassified. The cost for this year is about just under $1,400, and an ongoing annual cost of $6,000. However, this can be absorbed into this fiscal year's budget. With the increase in revenues and decrease in expenses, we're anticipating a savings of about $257,000 in this cost center. Just real quick, there, a transfer out to behavioral health of $13,000, almost $14,000. This is completely offset by a increase in VLF fees that's designated for mental health services. So it comes into the general fund, lands in general revenues, goes out as a transfer out to the health department. And so this is really just to ensure that those counts stay in balance. General fund miscellaneous revenues. So this is the cost center we use to capture and record all of the sales tax, TOT tax, franchise fees, other state and federal government revenues that come in that don't go directly to a department. Some of them come in and get transferred out to other cost centers, but this is where the bulk of the revenue comes in. Again, this year we are seeing an increase in sales tax, property tax. The sales tax is anticipated to increase by about $400,000 and property transfer tax of about $210,000. Collectively, we're anticipating an increase in general revenues of about $600,000, but we would only ask that your board recognize $341,000 in unanticipated revenue at this time. Last part of the general fund here, and no action is being required at this time, but we just wanted to mention is libraries, recreation, standard park, and youth centers. Many of the services at Tuolumne County Library have been restored at this point. There's no need to increase in appropriations, and during the 2021 budget, the operations for library and recreation departments were combined under a single recreation and library manager. We're still working with our manager there to find out what the most efficient and effective model for staffing is there. So, you know, as we come back with the recommended budget, there may be a change there, but right now there's no recommended action for the library operations. Also, when we created the 2021 adopted budget, this did include the cost for restoring services at Standard Park, youth centers, and recreation programs this spring. So those funds are already there. We're working with our recreation manager to get Standard Park open. I just called again this morning to find out how many applications we have. That's our biggest hang up right now is the staffing for Standard Park. We usually run about 8 to 10 employees. We have one right now, the rest have moved on, and we've only received 7 applications to date. So we would encourage anyone to apply so we can get that park open. So in summary, one of the things I want to point out is, the general fund, when you hear this, it sounds like an overall positive message financially for the general fund. However, we just want to remind people that this comes at a cost. There were significant staff vacancies. This impacts the services we can provide to the community. This impacts the staff itself and overall morale of the departments. Again, we saw almost 90 vacancies at one point throughout all cost centers and all funds, which is about 15% of our workforce. When we combine this with the savings from travel and training because of COVID-19, the inability to retain staff and fill vacancies and send folks to training, we're estimating a savings of about $1.275 million this fiscal year. So those are funds that we would have normally have expended had we been able to have a normal year with staffing as well as be able to send people to training. We also have, with more people staying at home and more online shopping taking place this last year, we did see the increase in sales tax, the state revenue from housing inmates. So collectively between all of those things, we are still seeing a savings, but again, that does come at a cost. Summarize all these actions that are being requested above. We have provided attachment A, which provides a line item detail of all the budgetary changes, which is an increase in appropriations of about $1.257 million and recognizing the same amount in revenue. Any questions on the general fund before we move forward into the rest?
Questions?
Supervisor Campbell, if I could just chime in real quick. One of the things, a couple of things that Eric hit on are critically important that everyone understand, especially our staff, that in those positions, had they been filled, we would never experience the savings that we're seeing right now. And that's important to all of us so that those that we work with understand in our community that when we ask for concessions, we did so based on the fact that we had expected and all of us thought that we would have these positions filled. The other impact that we're seeing from this budget that I know Eric and Debbie and I've had a lot of time talking and discussing is the CARES Act has, because we had to reallocate resources, meaning people, equipment, and time to respond to COVID, some of that has been, we were able to pull down CARES Act funding, which means the general fund did not cover all of that. Some of it did. And I say that in a way it gives us a false sense of security. We went through about $5 million in a very short amount of time. And again, that caution is when we think about $10.5 million coming forward, that's a 3-year period. We were able to use $5 million in a relatively short time. So we're being very careful as we develop a plan for your board. But what I wanted to make sure is that that those listening understand that this budget and where we are right now and why it looks like it does is because of the vacancies more than anything else. And that is an impact, as Eric said, on our community and services that were not provided. And then to our staff who are the ones sitting there trying to keep up the level of work due to staff shortages. And I think that, any questions on any of that?
And I was going to say something along the same lines, that if you look at, if you take a very superficial look at what you've presented today in terms of revenues versus expenses, it to somebody just a tertiary glance would say, wow, this is a pretty healthy budget, especially compared to what we've had in the past, 5 to 10 years. But it doesn't, and I really think that our CAO and staff should be applauded for finding ways of filling in all the cracks and getting as much money we can through various sources. But it doesn't tell the whole story. While our sales tax is up, our TOT is pretty significantly down. While we have relief in the form of CARES Act grants, we're having major difficulty attracting and retaining staff. And so many of the positive things that we see here are on the backs of those other negative things. And so while it's certainly better to have this, and this is a big improvement over what we've had in past years, the issues are still, there are still issues there. And it's I'm just trying to, highlight that we can't just look at the superficial view and say, hey, our revenues are above our expenses. There are other costs there underneath that. And I think I saw Supervisor Half was making a move.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize something that for the public perception, and that is with that many vacancies, we have had what I would say is unsustainable workforce. People have been working double duty on staff in all the various departments, and it is not sustainable. It's not something we can continue to do. And I know sometimes the public thinks, oh, well, you've saved that much money. You can just continue saving that kind of money. And no, it's really not sustainable. And we'd have a bigger fallout of staff leaving if they have to continue wearing so many different hats and trying to get all of the work done. So I just wanted to applaud the staff that's been through this for the year, that has remained and remained loyal to the county and done the hard work in every department. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. So you're going to move on to HHSA, correct?
Correct.
Let me check and see. Do we have any public comment right now just on the general fund? Okay. All right. You may proceed.
All right, so moving forward into the Health and Human Services Agency, which includes several different funds and departments, which Public Health, Behavioral Health, Department of Social Services, Behavioral Health Housing, and the Ambulance Enterprise Fund. The most significant changes we see in this recommendation are the changes to the Social Services Fund, which is requesting an increase in appropriations about $1.2 million. However, that is offset by revenue that's coming in as well. So in the Public Health Fund, there has been numerous changes throughout the fiscal year that have impacted this, but most of them have been fiscally neutral, meaning while there's been an increase in expense one place, there's been a decrease in expense somewhere else. So it's balanced out. Overall, from a budgetary perspective, the Health Fund is performing as expected with only minor changes requested. Again, this goes back to what we discussed earlier about the Office of Emergency Services, where staff assigned to a particular department may provide services for other grant-funded programs. So this year we see it just a little bit of a change there between the Health Department, WIC, and Child Welfare or California Child Services. So there's increases in expenses for California Child Services as well as WIC, but that's being offset by the decrease in the Health Department as well. And again, those were staff that were assigned to grant-funded programs that could not perform those duties, and so there's an increased cost there, but again, that's no impact to the general fund. The Social Services Administration Department, there have been numerous new grants that have come in. With those new grants comes increased expenses in service and staff, as well as earlier this year, your board approved a reorganization of the Health and Human Services Agency, which included social services as well. And those costs are being reflected in the proposed changes here as we go forward. Overall, we're anticipating an increase in appropriations of $943,000. However, this is being entirely offset by revenue from the state and the federal sources, and there is no impact to the general fund. These are funds that have to be spent on these programs within these departments. Welfare and Security Department has an increase in appropriations of about $250,000 specific to foster care costs, but that revenue is coming into the Social Services Fund from the federal government as well to offset that cost. Any questions on any of those? Seeing none. All right, moving forward into the enterprise funds. Tuolumne County Ambulance Services operated through a contract with Manteca Ambulance District. The services provided under this agreement are primarily paid for by users or user fees, and many of the patients transported are on Medi-Cal, which reimburses for a portion of the fees they're charged, but we don't see the full cost recovery. With COVID-19, we see less transports, which means we're getting less revenue, and we're seeing a higher mix of Medi-Cal patients, meaning we're also receiving less revenue. Overall, we're anticipating a decrease in revenue of about $413,000. So to ensure that the enterprise fund remains balanced, staff is recommending that we reduce contingencies by the $413,000, which is currently set at $1.7 million. There was a recent approval of fee increases in ambulance services moving forward in next fiscal year, and so this should help reduce any future need to rely on contingencies for ongoing operations. So the requested action would be to decrease contingencies by $413,000.
And Eric, just to clarify,
Yes.
that's specific to that fund?
Correct.
enterprise Fund. Okay.
All right, moving forward, internal service funds, the telecommunications fund. So prior to 2018, the Tuolumne County Superior Court utilized phone service through Tuolumne County, meaning their phones were directly connected to this building. We provided support, billing, and the like for them. In 2018, the county opted to upgrade its phone system to what we have today, and knowing that the courthouse would be constructed, the courts opted not to partake in that. However, the years preceding that, they had made annual contributions into the telecom fund. We had estimated in 2018 that they had invested about $99,000 into the telecom fund. And now in discussions with the courthouse, they have decided, and because, sorry, let me back up. So in 2018, we identified about $99,000 in revenue that they have contributed to the telecom fund. We established an MOU with the courts at that time that we would continue to pay their phone bill and provide some limited technical support for their phone system until those funds were expended. We've tracked those expenses for the last 2.5 years, and so to date, there's about $72,000 of unexpended telecom funds that belong to the Superior Court. So in discussions with them, and because our IT staff is limited, them moving into the new facility and no longer have this need, we would be returning those funds to them, but to do that, we would agree to an amendment to the MOU, but also we would need to increase appropriations by that $72,000. There's also a slight increase in expenses due to some vandalism and break-in of vehicles out at our IT department that fall within the telecom fund of about $3,000. So altogether, we're looking about an increase in appropriations of $75,000, which would just reduce our beginning fund balance. It would come from the beginning fund balance of $511,000. Any questions on the telecom fund? Not seeing any. So the final recommendation is respectfully recommended that your board approve the budgetary adjustments outlined in this memo as well as attachment A, and approve the requested personnel changes described in this memo in attachment B. This would, for these changes, it would require a 4/5 vote.
Okay, any final questions or comments from the board? Supervisor Brandon.
Eric, thank you for the presentation, and again to admin staff for putting this all together. Many of these things I think are addressing really critical issues in the county government, IT, for example, or addressing changing budget circumstances, so we're trying to make it fit. There is one thing that I would like if we can do a separate vote on specifically, which is under the election section. That is a new item, and that would be the full cost of the special election.
Supervisor Goldenberg.
Eric, thank you very much for the presentation. It was well laid out, informative, easy to follow, and so I really appreciate the work that you and other staff put into it. Just in looking at things now and looking forward, the contingency funding, at $1.1 million, would like to see what we can do to increase funds and contingencies so we have better, financial stability looking to the future. Looking at this budget, and it won't be long before we're going to be moving into talking about the 2021-22 budget. We've got a lot of work to do still. We need to make some corrections in how things perhaps, handled in the past. The whole COVID, thing obviously threw the county a tremendous curveball. We've learned a lot from it. Hopefully we won't have that situation to keep dealing with, but in moving forward, we need to take lessons learned and where we figured out where we could save some funds and where not, and apply those lessons, to, as we move forward to next year's budget. So, thank you.
Okay. I just made a few comments and we'll move forward, but I'm glad to hear that it sounds like the hall is operating pretty efficiently as far as financially going. So that's one thing I wrote down. I just want to put that out there. If Chief Hawks is listening, good work. And then one thing I wrote down, it looks like the cost for employees throughout these cost centers, it's not that we're giving raises, it's just the step increases. So when people are wondering why there's money going to personnel, it's because of those step increases. So important. I'm not sure with Supervisor Brandon what your request is. Is it to have a special vote on the election specifically?
Yeah, Supervisor Kirk, specifically, it would be to split the motion of the vote to be able to take the $125,000 for the cost of the special election to do a separate vote from the rest of it.
Okay.
And I can make the motion now or afterwards. I was just looking to have
I just want to clarify.
feedback.
And then Goldenberg, I completely agree with your contingency things. I know for this is to get us through March, and then we're going to go into further discussions, and I agree. Goldenberg will be looking at shoring up some things and putting hopefully some more money aside. So unless Kathleen, unless you have anything to add, those are my comments, and I'm not sure if we're all there with Supervisor Brandon on the election thing, but.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the good work that you and the whole staff and all of the departments have put forth for this different not mid-year budget. And I don't have any questions.
Yeah, and I was going to say something along the same lines as how strange this year has been in terms of funding. Some parts are way down and then other parts are up, and very unusual. But sitting here now compared to sitting here last year, I feel much better. This is much better. And I know the amount of work that's gone into this, and really thank you, Eric and Tracy, and Debbie. A lot of work making this work as well as it has. And I also wanted to thank staff for making really strong efforts to restore the library and parks. The reason why it's not in this discussion for additional appropriations is you didn't wait till this point. You got it done before we even got here. And so I really appreciate that, and I think the community does as well. So that was all I wanted to highlight. Do we have any public comment? No public comment. Okay, if there's no other discussion, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to motion to split the election cost center out for the special election for a separate vote.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
If I could make a comment with my second, the fire needs are critical. Obviously, going towards a parcel tax, to resolve the issues of being underfunded for too long and to provide for stability in the future. It's a whole issue on its own, so I support having a separate vote on that.
Any other comment?
I just want to clarify, if we take a vote and it passes and we do the full what is that going to do? What are we doing? What are the implications of that?
All you're doing, Supervisor Brandon, what he's asking is that you would just consider the item separately from the rest of the budget. So you're just pulling it aside. You would do it as you would do any other motion. You would consider it only by itself and do the rest of all of the other action staff has requested.
Okay. And if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, then what?
If it does not pass, then we'll have to have further conversation. I've been having conversation with Debbie, our elections clerk, as well as with Sarah about, I don't know if Sarah, I don't know how to speak to it.
Is it a 4/5 vote or is it majority?
Well, all the budget items are 4/5
Right.
vote to change the budget at this point. So anytime after the adopted budget, it always takes a 4/5 vote. We may have to break, and if it were not to pass, and Sarah, Debbie, and I have a conversation about, so this is what's come up since the questions, and Debbie and I were discussing this yesterday afternoon. When you have a public entity or entities who come together and do whatever is needed to qualify to put an item on the ballot, is it possible for the legislative body not to fund that election? So something similar, not quite anywhere the same, but we know the governor has this recall that's going against him. It would be like him saying, I'm not going to fund that election when everyone has jumped through all the steps to get to the point where they can get that item on the ballot.
That's kind of where I'm at, because we're in a JPA. We're just part of the conversation. So if we were to not pass that, we undermined the actual election of it, we
Right.
leave the whole JPA without really a voice. And so what I would say to that is, I think we should take a majority vote on if we're going to make this a separate item.
That's up to your board.
So I would suggest that, I would make
Okay.
a motion that we don't make it a separate item, and that we vote on the whole thing, because I don't know if the majority of the board wants to separate this item.
Well, I've heard what Supervisor Goldenberg has said, but I'd like a little more discussion from Supervisor Brandon as to why it's necessary, you feel that it's necessary to separate it out.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Half. I think in looking at most of these changes, it is a distinct item. And in the interest of transparency and communication, having a separate vote, I think, is more clear to the public. A lot of times we have these very long documents and things can kind of get buried in there. And most of these, I think, are very much in line with corrections, and we're trying to address from what we budgeted last time any changes. This is a distinct piece. So that's one component of that to me. The second is, and I appreciate the second as well, and I know that, sustainable fire funding is a goal for us. It is something that's incredibly important. I've been very vocal online and talking to the public about the aging apparatus and equipment that we have, and especially in District 5, the challenges the fire districts in my district face. And all of those are no less true today than they were before. I mean, they're probably more so, right? In looking at this, it's because I want us to find that sustainable funding that I think the public needs a lot more time to understand this. I feel that the information required for something like this is going to be a lot more. And we can make the argument that that's not the role, but we're here to be, I think, partly the arbiter of, we want this to succeed. We want this to not be futile, because that's $125,000 that could go to a repair and maintenance vehicle, for example. It's not that I think it is a bad idea, but I think that the case needs to be made a little more. We need a little more time on that. And so for that reason is why I think that this needs to be considered separately. And it may be that the board has a different direction for this, and that's okay. But that's just, that's what I see from my position here.
So I would say to that, every item is distinct. We have a problem with fire. It's our number one concern with all of our constituents. It's our number one priority as a board member. I agree. There's never going to be consensus on here about how to go about doing that. I, for the most part, oppose any sort of tax. I was against the TOT tax. I was surprised it passed. Do I want to tax people for fire? No, but when I look at the numbers, I want them to at least have the option to decide. And I think with so much work and energy that's gone into this, with specifically for our partners, the very community that we're going to ask for support, whether we do it through this or through a 1% or however, whatever you're thinking about, those are the same people who are going to have to support whatever we put before them, or we're going to need their support. And so I feel like there's been too much energy and too much of our partnership through the JPA that they've put into this. And pass or fail, I think my experience with my opinions on taxes, this is where we're at, and I really think that the community needs to make a decision moving forward. And I think for me, it would feel like it was a bit of an undermine. And I understand you're a new board member coming in. We all deal with this as we come on the board. but this thing was put in motion before the new board, before the majority of you guys were elected. And I don't think today would be the time to stop that. I think we've had this conversation a few times and the majority of the board wasn't there. And I think today is just another perhaps example. Maybe we're not all in agreement. Maybe the majority, doesn't feel the same. So with that, I would make a motion that we approve the entire budget presentation today and not separate that one thing out.
Okay, so we already have a motion to separate out, before we get there.
Okay.
So we already have a motion to separate out the elections, a motion to decide whether or not we separate the elections portion from the rest of the budget. So is there,
Supervisor Campbell?
Yeah.
Just to be clear, according to your board procedures, it sounds like Supervisor Kirk made a substitute motion.
Okay.
So then you would take that substitute motion first and address it first before then you would move on to the motion by Supervisor Brandon.
okay, all right, well, I'm sorry I cut you down. You want to continue with your substitute motion
if
now
I could
before
make
I so
another comment?
rudely interrupted?
If I could make another comment?
Well, so I interrupted Supervisor Kirk when he was making his substitute motion, so I'll let him finish.
So my substitute
and then you'll have
motion.
the first
Okay.
one.
So my substitute motion then would be to approve the budgetary adjustments outlined in this memo in attachments A and approve the requested personnel changes as described in attachment B.
Okay. Is there a second? I will second that. So motion by Supervisor, or substitute motion by Supervisor Kirk and second by Supervisor Candle. And I'm sorry, Supervisor Goldenberg, you wanted to say something.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate. When I made that statement, I was very clear in that I'm supporting moving ahead for fire, moving ahead for sustained funding that's sorely needed for fire. I have no desire to postpone the processes that are currently in place. I believe, as Supervisor Kirk said, that we need to move forward with this and put it before the voters. I felt Supervisor Brandon had a good point in that this is a very important issue, and so that's why I second his motion initially, to have this type of discussion because it is important. So I just wanted to clarify that where I was at in this whole process.
Chairman Campbell and Supervisor Kirk, I think in the initial motion, it would have been a 3/5 to determine whether we move forward with that, and then a 4/5 to confirm the final item. So it's a similar, I think they're effectively the same motion that's approaching it from both sides, which is perfectly okay. The motion is basically, are we splitting this off, or are we having a combined vote there? I just wanted to say two things. One was earlier, you mentioned with the JPA. We are a member of that. One question that I've had consistently since the beginning, because as you mentioned, we came into this, this was already an ongoing process. I had a lot of questions to ask to understand it, was when the county would have a point that we would either vote to authorize it, to put on the ballot, to pay for it. I may not have phrased those requests correctly, but I was not aware for a long time that at the end, though I suspected we would be voting to pay for it, this came in here was kind of contradicting what I thought that I had been told. And I brought this up and we talked about this as with staff, and I expressed these concerns. But I think that's fine. I will say, though, our policies make no sense regarding motions. This is ridiculous that we can just motion over each other all the time. And I really hope we look at this because I think we basically have the same motion, but the substitute counter motion, we need more than a 4-page handbook to govern this body, I think.
Well, I mean, you're the one proposing that we change what was the recommended procedure. And what Supervisor Kirk is saying is that we vote on the budget as it's presented, if I'm understanding correctly. So maybe if you could clarify what you're trying to accomplish, that would be more helpful than looking at the system as it is, because I don't see any issue with voting on the budget as it is. I think it is within the scope of what would be increased appropriation for this kind of thing. So all of these other considerations about the JPA and whether or not we support this is kind of not germane to what we're talking about here, which is why I tend to favor voting on the budget as it is rather than parceling out, because we could all pick out certain pieces that we don't want or what have you, and it would make it a much more cumbersome process, which is kind of what we're seeing here. But I would be more supportive of just a straight up and down vote. If you don't like the additional appropriations, you can vote against it. And if you do, you can vote for it. To me, it's pretty simple.
To me, finding, I think, a way that we can be able to vote as a body with consensus for most of it is an ideal, where then if something we have some issues with, and I can't represent your values, I can only represent my values and my promises to my constituents and how I would approach these issues. And that may be very different. Procedurally, my motion going forward, the question was to split it off as a separate vote. And if it ended up being a 1-4 or 2-3 and the motion failed, then we would have by default gone back to the original vote. This process of adding counter extra motions, that's what's making this longer. It would have been a fairly straightforward procedural thing. And had that happened, then I would have made a decision on the entire thing, having had my motion fail.
Okay.
It's not that complicated, but it's complicated because we don't have these written down. I don't think, just for the sake of expediency, that we shouldn't allow board members to make motions where they feel things are important. And I do feel this is important. And I would hope my fellow board members, even if you don't agree, would recognize that as well. But I think the discussion we're having is under our policy, Supervisor Kirk's motions, which, as we found out before, that are the policies that we do follow right now.
So Supervisor Brandon made a motion, I made a counter motion that we had, like I said, already made it. So I think we should vote and move forward because we're going back and forth.
Yeah. And I agree with you there. So just to clarify, so your motion is that we vote on the budget as it is?
As it is, correct.
Okay. I'll look to county council. So a yes vote.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So a yes vote on this approves the budget, and then there's no need to go.
That's how I understand Supervisor
further.
Clerk's motion. Yes.
Okay.
And
then this would require 4/5
Correct.
to pass. Okay.
point of order, Sarah.
Yes.
Just quickly to better my understanding, could I also then make a counter motion over Supervisor Kirk's motion for a different one?
Yes, actually, you can have up to 3 motions on the table. And if you did that, then you take the third, then the second,
Yeah.
and then the first.
And I'm not going to do that. I just want to point out how ridiculous that is
Well,
as a
we're-
process.
I mean, I don't know what point of order means, but we know how you stand on this issue. It gets brought up every time this issue is discussed. And so we need to make a vote and move forward. And so I don't want to be going over you as well. I'm just going off what's presented, and I don't know what else to say. So if you want to do a third, that's fine, but I think.
No, I don't.
Okay.
So my
No, I
first
know you don't.
motion
I'm
would
sorry.
have
And I hear
solved
what
it.
you're saying, Goldenberg. Thank you for saying what you said about how you want to have that discussion. And I feel like part of that was played out a little bit. And so I think we just need to.
Okay.
Well, I need to say something. I'm still not clear. I'm really not clear on what Supervisor Brandon is trying to say. I don't think you've said it. I don't think you've directly said whatever. And before we make a vote on anything, I'd like to hear what the problem is with the allocation of the 105 from the county and the 20,000 specifically from the JPA. Is that part of the problem?
So I think I have been specific on splitting the motion.
I didn't hear it then.
I have two concerns. One of them is I think it is a separate and important enough issue to warrant an independent vote, because there is no requirement that this all has to be done in one single vote. And the second part of that is, as far as the funding, I would rather see that money spent on fire equipment or apparatus right now to give a body that has worked a lot on this, but I think needs more time to inform the public. I believe that it's not just a procedural thing. We are making a qualitative judgment on whether this deserves taxpayer dollars to fund a special election. It is a tacit endorsement of this. I think without more public input, without more public communication on it, that's very hard for me, because that's something that's very important. So that's why the reasons that I made the motion, and my motion, which is not the one on the table, is specifically not the election section, but to pull out the $125,000 portion to do a separate vote on under the election section.
So you're not in favor of spending any money on a special election, is that the case?
Not at this point, no.
Okay, that's what I needed to hear. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? And I did ask for public comment, just checking to see any more public comment. Okay. All right, so the motion before us is to a straight yes or no vote on the budget appropriations and recognition of unanticipated revenues as written. Everyone agree, correct? Okay. All right, so I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so motion carries with 4 votes aye and 1 vote no. Supervisor Brandon voting no. Okay. So thank you very much. We'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We'll reconvene at 10:35. Back from our break, thanks very much. So we had just finished our 9 o'clock appointment, and so we're back onto the regular agenda. I think we were on item number 4, is that correct? I don't think you voted. They voted? I thought they just voted to take it as a whole package. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was just reprimanded by our assessor recorder. Auditor controller, sorry. And I reassigned you. So I'll look to our clerk. Could you please read our item number 4 on our agenda today?
Consideration of adopting Resolution 2821, approving Amendment Number 6 to the 2017-2019 Tuolumne County Management Association Memorandum of Understanding, fully restoring all furlough concessions made during fiscal year 2021.
Okay, and do we have Ann on the phone with us?
She is on remotely, yes.
Okay.
Let's see if she-
Can you hear us, Ann?
Can you hear me now? Are you there? Can you hear me?
Hey, Ms. Riggs, could you get,
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
okay. Hello, Ann.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
There we are. Hello. So before you today is the CTMA Amendment Number 6 to restore all concessions made during the fiscal year. In June of 2021, 2020, excuse me, your board approved freezing salaries at the level they were at on June 21st, and the CTMA took 120 hours of unpaid furlough. In October, your board restored the salary freeze as well as gave a temporary 2% salary increase that would have expired on June 20th, 2021. Since the funding came in for to help restore additional, attached is Amendment 6, which restores all changes made during the fiscal year as if they never happened. The temporary salary adjustment will expire on April 10th. Salaries will return to their regular pay range effective April 11th, 2021. The leave cap accruals that were increased during this year will return to their normal level on June 20th, 2021, but no employee will be required to forfeit any accrued leave that's over that amount. And furlough has been eliminated effective April 11th, and any unpaid hours that were taken between June 21st and April 10th will be paid back at the range that became effective on April 11th. And all retroactive pay will be paid back to them on or before the pay period ending May 22nd, and lump sum shall not be reported to PERS. So it's recommended your board approve Amendment 6 to the 2017-2019 Tuolumne County Management Association Memorandum of Understanding, fully restoring all concessions for the fiscal year.
Okay, anything, any questions, Supervisor Half?
Yeah, hi, Ann. Just wanted to understand the reasoning for the lump sum not to be reported to PERS.
Because all along hours have been reported to PERS as worked. So in essence of not killing the payroll staff and having to go back and manually change every single payroll for about 300 people since the beginning of the fiscal year, we agreed to doing a lump sum that's not reported to PERS because most of the hours have already been reported as furlough hours to PERS.
Thank you.
Supervisor
You're
Goldberg?
welcome.
Yes, I think my question is the same end, but just wanted to clarify. The employees will not see any reduction in their retirement by not reporting this as a lump sum. I guess that's the bottom line, is that they don't lose out on anything here. They're still going to get their, is that correct?
So the employees that are retiring during this fiscal year, we've made an exception, and for those few people, we will be doing a payroll adjustment for those, but for everyone else that's not going to retire within this 12 months, those people will not have any adjustments. So technically, no, they will not see any reduction in their retirement.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Debbie, did you have our auditor controller, Debbie Bautista?
Auditor controller this time. Yeah, just to clarify what Ann's saying is that this would not be a simple act to undo everything. One of the agreements we had with the employees at the very beginning of the concessions is that we would not harm them in PERS. So we've been reporting 80 hours of PERS, even if they only did 72, because we showed the 8 hours of furlough. So if we had to go back and retro and do everything in PERS, it's not just reporting it to PERS, But remember, employees pay a share of PERS, so they would then have to be paying their portion of the PERS that we would have to share, report. And I have to tell you, if my employees had to retro back 26, about 20 payrolls for every single person, 20 lines for every single person, we would not be done making everybody whole in PERS till after July.
Okay, comments from the public? All right, bring it back to the board. If there's any further discussion, or I'll look for a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve the consideration adopting Resolution 28-21, approving Amendment 6 to the 2017-2019 Tuolumne County Management Association Memorandum of Understanding, fully restoring all furlough concessions made during fiscal year 2020-2021.
I second that.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Goldenberg, second by Supervisor Half. I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. All right. Item number 5.
Consideration of adopting Resolution 2921, approving amendment number 6 to the 2017-2019 County Deputy Sheriff's Association Memorandum of Understanding, fully restoring all furlough concessions made during fiscal year 2021. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are you still with us,
Okay,
Ann?
in June, I am. Can you still hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. So in June, your board approved amendment number 4 to the 2017-2019 Deputy Sheriff's Association, which included in freezing wages effective June 21st, 2020, and also gave all Deputy Sheriff Association members 120 hours of unpaid furlough time because of a budget shortfall. In October, your board approved Amendment 5, which became effective October 25th, which included lifting the salary freeze and restoring all flexibly staffed positions, plus gave a temporary 2% salary restoration, which would have expired on June 20th. Amendment 6 restores all flexibly staffed promotions, step increases, longevity increases, effective June 21st, 2020, and paying retroactive pay for all of these changes as if they had never happened. Furlough has been eliminated effective April 10th, and any unpaid hours will be stricken as being able to be used, and any hours taken will be paid at the July 1st, 2019 range. Vacation and accrual caps shall return to 2 times their annual rate effective June 20th, 2021. And again, no employee shall be required to forfeit any vacation hours over that cap. And all retroactive pay will be paid in a lump sum no later than the pay period ending May 8th. And this lump sum will not be reported to PERS. So it's recommended that your board approve this amendment number 6 for the 2017-2019 Tuolumne County Deputy Sheriff's Association Memorandum of Understanding, fully restoring all concessions made for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay, and we're doing, can you, I guess I'll look to CAO Riggs, can you explain, so we're doing this as part of the restorations to the American Rescue Plan, correct?
Correct. One of the, I was just reading through the memos, and what we should have started with was due to the American Rescue Plan is why we've come back to employees. So in each of the amendments, as you can see, we've done several with our employees. The board had promised that should the state or federal government do some type of funding that would allow us to backfill lost revenues, that the board would consider reinstating or eliminating the concession. So That's why we came to your board with that recommendations. This is due to that $10.5 million that does allow us to backfill for revenue. And I just want to make sure that we stated that's why we are doing these restorations, was because of the American Rescue Plan and the funding that it does allow us to backfill for prior lost revenues. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, questions from the board? Public comment? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment number 6 for the 2017-2020 Executive Confidential Compensation Plan, which fully restores all concessions made for fiscal year 2021. What's that? Which one? Did I click on number
I thought
6?
he said Deputy Sheriff's Association. Did he?
I was clicking on the board. Okay. So,
Second.
excuse me, consideration. Yeah, I read the recommendation on the memo. Unless there's a typo in the memo. So number 5, if you go to the board memo DSA, the bottom of the recommendation. Okay, let's do this again. I am making a motion to approve amendment number 6 for the 17-19 Tuolumne County Deputy Sheriff's Association Memorandum of Understanding fully restoring all concessions made for fiscal year 2021. I was clicking on number 6.
So, just to clarify here, so the previous one was also amendment number 6. These are all amendments number 6.
They are.
Okay. So the pertinent part is we're talking about the Deputy Sheriff's Association. Okay.
That's why I made the mistake.
Okay.
I kept seeing number 6.
I thought I heard him say Deputy Sheriff's Association. But
I had
did
2
not?
tabs open,
Okay.
so
All right.
that's why you're the chair.
Yeah. So motion by Supervisor Kirk. I believe I heard a second by Supervisor Brandon. Okay. Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. Those opposed? No? Okay. Motion carries 5-0. Okay. Item 6.
Consideration of adopting Resolution 3021, approving amendment number 6 to the 2017-2020 Tuolumne County Executive Confidential Compensation Plan, fully restoring all furlough concessions made during fiscal year 2021.
All right.
Okay, in June, your board approved amendment number 4 to the 2017-2020 Executive Confidential Compensation Plan, which included freezing salaries effective June 21st, 2020, and also did 120 hours of furlough, which was equivalent to a 6% salary reduction. In September, your board approved amendment number 5, which lifted the salary freeze, and instead of a 6% salary reduction, all members received a 4% salary reduction, which would have expired on June 20th, 2021. The furlough and vacation cap provisions did not change. There was still the same 120 hours of furlough given to all members. In the Amendment 4, the elected officers, including the assessor, recorder, auditor, controller, district attorney, sheriff, and tax collector, waived their deferred contribution made by the county. And in September, 4% of that deferred contribution was restored to those elected officers. Amendment number 6 fully restores all employees back to their June 21st, 2020 range, and any sort of flexibly staffed promotions, step increases, longevity increases, educational incentives will be applied and paid as retroactive pay. The members of this unit will continue to be allowed to use their 120 hours of furlough as long as it's used by June 30th, 2021, and any furlough not used shall be forfeited. The 2% salary adjustment will expire on April 24th, and their pay range will be returned to the July 1st, 2019 range. The elected officers' deferred contribution will also be restored to June 21st and paid as retroactive pay. And the retroactive pay will also be paid as a lump sum, on or before the pay period ending June 5th, and shall not be reported to PERS. So it's recommended that your board approve amendment number 6 for the 2017-2020 Executive Confidential Compensation Plan, which fully restores all concessions made for fiscal year 2021.
Any questions on this one? All right. Public comment. All right, no questions, public comment. Bring it back to the board.
I'm prepared to make a motion
All right.
to approve the adoption of Resolution 30-21, approving Amendment Number 6 to the 2017 through 2020 Tuolumne County Executive and Confidential Compensation Plan, fully restoring all furlough concessions made during fiscal year 2021.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Motion by Supervisor Haff, second by Supervisor Goldenberg. Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. All right, clerk, would you please read we're up to number 7 now.
Consideration of adopting Resolution 3121, approving Amendment 6 to the 2017-21 Tuolumne County Attorneys Association Memorandum of Understanding, fully restoring all furlough concessions made during fiscal year 2021.
Okay, so I'm going to recuse myself from discussion on this item as my wife is Deputy Public Defender and as such is a member of this particular bargaining group.
All right. Take it away. Ann, you there?
Sorry, I had a note that I got muted by the host. Sorry.
No worries. Go ahead.
Okay. So before you is the resolution, amendment number 6 for the 2017-2020 Deputy Attorneys Association Memorandum of Understanding. In June, your board approved Amendment 4, which eliminated the negotiated COLA and equity adjustments for fiscal year 2020, applied a 6% salary reduction, which was, and then they were given 120 hours of furlough leave, and reduced the cafeteria allowance by $200 per person per month because of an expected budget shortfall. The vacation caps and cash outs were also increased. In September, your board approved Amendment 5, which became effective September 27th, which restored the COLA and equity adjustments, reduced the salary reduction to 4% from 6%, and also restored the cafeteria allowance with no retroactivity. Amendment number 6 fully restores all concessions made during fiscal year 2021, which has the temporary 2% salary adjustment expiring April 10th, 2021. The COLA and equity adjustments will be restored to June 21st, 2020 and paid as retroactive pay. The cafeteria allowance will also be restored effective June 20th and paid as retroactive pay. Vacation caps and cash outs provisions remain unchanged. And the members of this unit will be allowed to continue to use 120 hours of furlough leave as long as it's used by June 30th, 2020. Any unused furlough will be forfeited on June 3rd, as of June 30th, 2021. And the retroactive pay will be paid lump sum no later than pay period ending June 5th and will not be reported to PERS. It's recommended that your board approve Amendment 6 for the 2017-2021 Deputy District Attorney's Unit Memorandum, fully restoring all concessions made during fiscal year 2021.
Great, thank you, Ann. Bring it to the board. Are there any questions from the board? No? And do we have any public comment? All right, we'll bring it back to the board. Looking for a motion?
I'll make motion to approve Resolution 31-21, approving amendment number 6 to the 2017 to 2021 Tuolumne County Attorneys Association Memorandum of Understanding, fully restoring all furlough concessions made during fiscal year 2020-2021.
I'll second.
that.
She can second it.
Ladies
Oh,
go
did we both
first.
go?
Yeah, Supervisor Hath second. All right. We got a first by Goldenberg, second by Hath. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, motion passes 4 with Supervisor Campbell recused.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to item number 8.
Consideration of providing staff direction on the future potential uses of the historic courthouses.
Ms. Riggs.
Okay, good morning, Tracy Riggs, County Administrator's Office. This item before you today is really not for you to make a final decision on what actual use of, not to make a final decision on the use of the courthouse, but to begin the process of considering the potential uses in the future. So it's my understanding that the courts are working very diligently to begin holding their first day of court being June 26th. I think it's the 28th. I'm looking, but there's no June up there. So with that being said, we're getting questions, and I've spoke to each of you individually, but you've not had over the months of what this might look like in the future, but we've not had this conversation in this arena where you could all hear what each other has to say. So some of the options we've talked about, and as you know, your board has directed, and it is a staff priority to try and move out of rented buildings so that those money spent on rent could be directed towards services for those in the community. With that in mind, we are always looking at that when we might have county buildings that come available. So one of the options that we have that is in your memo today is just to consider the option of maybe having the board meetings in the historic courthouse. And so again, not looking for the answer on what you actually want to do, but just kind of throw these out there, and then we'll come back with a future conversation. This one is really just meant for me to get to the ability to issue an RFP with board support if that's something that you would like to do, and that would, but let me go further through this. So if we were to move the 4th floor into the historic courthouse, it would leave this 4th floor open. What we then started looking about was who is paying rent that is in the general fund or somewhere else that we could bring into the building that would also fit within the services of this building. We then came to IT. IT does have they have a beautiful office with beautiful parking, and it does come at a cost. We do pay rent for that building. It's approximately $150,000 per year. We've been in that building. I've been in the county for 15 years, and we've been in that building for at least that long, and I don't know how much longer without getting the contract. So you add that up, 15 years at $150,000. That's a lot. So what we talked about was moving IT into the 4th floor. We have a backup generator. It does solve some of the issues we have with not having a built-in generator to the building where they are currently located. The other idea was is maybe moving the district attorney, and I have spoke with our new district attorney about this, is the idea of maybe moving the district attorney away from the high school. We know that we won't have anything for some time at the Law and Justice Center, but it gets pretty busy down there, and trying to get in and out of their offices in the morning, in the midday, and then even in the afternoons, especially when they have other activities going on. So the idea was we could move the district attorney into the Washington Street Courthouse, and then we would then sell the building that they're currently in, as that is owned by the county, and the cost could be used towards the any remodeling costs for the Washington Street Courthouse. With all that being said, I did ask our chief building official, Brian Bell, to just start giving me high level, what would we need to do in order to do any services changing from what they're doing right now? And of course, the first one is we have to meet the ADA accommodations as we are required to do. And in that building, it would mean installing an elevator. And I know and I say I know, I wasn't part of the conversation way back when there was some conversation about putting an elevator in. But I think it's important that our community understand that we will not be able to change services and be in that building without putting an elevator into that building. So with that being said, what staff would like to do, just for the first steps, because it's going to take some time, and what I have gathered from your comments over these last months is that is a building you really prefer not to sit vacant for an extended period of time. So what I'm asking is that you would, I would have board support to issue a request for proposals. We would probably need someone to help us with what to put in for the scope of work in that proposal, because that's a historic building. So what type of elevator, that type of, and then actually the RFP itself for the elevator. So then we could bring that back to your board for further consideration. The other one is I would also like to issue an RFP for someone to help us with the space needs. So if we're going to move the 4th floor into that building, it's very different. What is the best use of the space? Same thing if we're going to have IT up here, what does that look like? And then if we were to move district attorney into historic courthouse, what would that look like? So you would have someone who would come in, work with the board, work with the county council and myself for what that would look like over there. Then we would also have them work with IT and district attorney. And none of this is final, so I just want to make sure the only time and the only cost for issuing RFP is staff time. But what it does give your board is additional information for what those potential for future uses might look like. But I think this will take a series of conversations, not just one. But today what I'm asking is that you would support our office issuing an RFP to get the cost for installation of an elevator in the historic courthouse, and then an RFP for space needs consultant to ensure that we're using the space as efficiently as we possibly can. And one of the things I want to address, because I've had a lot of questions, so I would expect that there are others who have the same question, is about the board chambers. We did do a lot of work. We say we, I didn't. It was really our incredible coworkers who made all that happen with some consultants to get this building or this conference boardroom into something that we can use during this time, but also into the future. What we've talked about, and of course we'll go further into detail, but I don't want anyone to think that this was done for no reason or for it's a wasted investment. What we would recommend is if you've been to IT, they actually have a training room. This could become that training room and also be an alternate site for board meetings in the future as well. If we have any issues in that other building, we could easily come right back over here. Right now, as you know, we're kind of limited on where else we can take you, especially when it comes to Wi-Fi and the ability to broadcast the way that we would like to. So I just want to make sure I put that out there, that I don't feel like it was a waste and that it can be used in the future, and especially just for our other committees and commissions where they may continue to do some of those remotely with those who can't participate in person. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Questions? Supervisor Kirk.
Question. So the only reason why I asked this about the space needs, I think the Law and Justice Center one was like 180,000, and I'm sure that was way more complicated. So when I hear space needs, I think we have office space, but is the space needs also like looking at the technology side of things? Because I just want to know a general idea, what are we going to looking at cost-wise, and what is it going to entail? Maybe you don't have an idea of cost.
Well, that's what the RFP is for, right? But I don't believe, I was just talking with Mo because she's done these a lot, and we don't think it would be as expensive because we are talking about buildings that are already in existence.
Right.
So it is a little bit different. We also wouldn't have as many departments. You're talking, administration, IT, and district attorney. Over there, we had quite a few more. And they were to develop new buildings and many alternatives to those buildings and different ways to put those departments together. So I don't know. I'm expecting it could be anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000. But honestly, Supervisor Kirk, we won't know until we get that. And we're not asking you to allocate any funding for it. Just that I don't want to issue an RFP for something that's going to be this public and this the historic courthouse, I know, is a really beloved campus over there. And I don't want to do anything that would make anyone feel as if we're marching ahead without the board's support and that we're not asking for a final decision. We'll begin that process, of which we've also discussed with, or I have discussed with you, in that we could see doing some town halls in the future too, just to hear what our community has to say about this and to gather input. So just the beginning part of the discussion, but in order to use that building at all, we will have to have that elevator. And I think it'll just hold us up longer if we wait.
Okay, so I'll just make a comment. So it sounds like what you're looking for direction for today is the elevator and space needs. So I'd say yes to both of those. When you talk about that other building, 15 years, yeah, 2.25 million.
Yeah.
And I look at all this as just like anybody who would buy a house, is you look at 10, 20 years out, and 10 years from now, we're going to save 1.5, and 20 years out, we're going to save 3 million. So obviously there's going to be some money up front, but in the long run, I think we've all had, I believe most of our board's been on the same page where we got to consolidate and where we can shore up those rents. I completely support not just this, but I know Rebecca's doing some things with her department. So across the board, wherever we can do that, I fully support. I did have a quick question just because you brought it up. The piece of property that the DA is in right now, do we own that or is that being rented?
We do own that.
We do own that. And then
Yes.
the court, obviously we don't own that.
The court?
The old courthouse that we were talking about maybe moving them into.
Yes, we own both of the courthouses, the one on Washington
But
and the
weren't
one
we having
right
to pay
here.
a rent, some sort of
No,
fee?
that's on so the cost for the community or county, I think it's county facilities payment, so it's called CFD.
Yeah.
What that is when a state builds its own courthouse, the county then has to pay to maintain that courthouse for them.
Okay.
That's what that is. So we own these.
Okay.
We don't own that one. The state
Right.
bought the property and they built it, so we will have to pay to maintain
So if
that
we're
building.
paying on that anyways, then I'd be in full favor of getting somebody in there to be paying on it and sell the other thing. So that's all I had to say.
And I think what they're talking about with respect to the district attorney is the courtroom.
On Washington
Oh, no,
Street.
I'm sorry, I
Right.
wasn't clear. I didn't mean this. I meant where on Washington Street, that little.
Yes, that building is owned by the county.
We own that. Okay, but we're
Yes.
paying that fee.
No, we'll pay the fee on the one out
On
at
the
the new
new-
Law and
Oh,
Justice
okay,
Center.
so I got confused. I thought we
Yeah.
were also paying to maintain that.
No, we don't we do pay
Okay.
to maintain the two courthouses now because we own them,
Right.
and that's our obligation. We have an obligation to do all the maintenance, utilities and such for the new courthouse, as does every county for a state courthouse.
Right, okay.
And so that's where that county facilities payment comes in.
Okay, thanks for
Yeah.
clarifying
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
What does it have?
I'm all for it. And I think the sale of the old church that the DA is in is a brilliant idea to help recoup some costs.
I think Supervisor Brandon got out there first.
Thank you. I think my main feedback on this, it is a really interesting idea because it's a beautiful building and potentially by reorganizing folks, we can save some money and use the space better. I'd love to see, I think, more options and the space requirements of potentially some of the other partners we have, departments. Public defender comes to mind if we're talking about the DA being in that building, that might also be a similar space. I think it's rented. Tracy, is that a possibility?
We are currently renting the building the public defender is in. However, we are moving staff right now. We're moving public defender and conflict counsel out of the rented building into the recreation building, and the UC Cooperative Extension will be moving in with the Community Development Department. So we're actually moving already to eliminate that rent currently as we speak. Eric's been working on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would still think it'd be interesting to see if we're considering the DA having the public defender in there as well, only because I look at both of those as,
Yeah. I think that if you spent some time with our district attorney, it might help to give you some idea why that might not be a good mix. But I think that's some time you should spend speaking. I know I heard a lot about that from our previous district attorney, and I would imagine that there's something similar. But the space, I don't know that there's enough space to do both, and we'll find out with the space needs study. And I'm not saying that we can't do it, but he is moving out of rented space, and so he will be in his own building soon.
Okay, just seems odd to put them in recreation a little bit, but
Well, recreation
I will,
is not there anymore.
yeah,
Remember, recreation moved in
the
with
library.
library, so it is half vacant, yeah.
okay. Beyond that, I'd be interested, something that I've heard from the community, we haven't been able to meet, but the Tuolumne County Museum Committee, in discussing potentially any interpretive or learning spaces in such a historic building. That would be something I'd be interested in seeing what rooms might be available for that. Maybe not necessarily a full floor, but are there options for something similar to like the Sonora Vets Hall, where the upstairs it's meeting spaces, but downstairs is an interpretive thing for the public. It's just something to be interested in, and also looking at potentially what are the options for a private lease. If there's any type of business that would be interested in moving in there while we retain the building, who might be willing to do some of these improvements, and it could prove to be a revenue generator, which could be very, very valuable. I don't know what the rent for a building like that would go, but probably quite a bit of money. I'm wondering, have we had discussions with the city?
I have not. I do have a meeting. I have to look at my schedule, as Mary Rose and I are trying to meet at least quarterly. So I will definitely be discussing that with her, but I've not talked to her yet. As again, we're not asking for a decision at this point, just some high-level ideas. But I will definitely bring it up to her and discuss
Great.
this topic with her.
Yeah, I
Sure.
hope we, I know towards the end, of course, we'll include them, but to make sure that throughout this, we're viewing them as a partner in it.
Absolutely.
Even if we may make the final decision, that we're really getting the perspective. I really like the idea for town halls and getting more community ideas as an early, I guess, RFI, request for ideas from the public. That'd be a really great. As far as the elevator study and the space needs study, I think both of those would be great information for us to have to make a better decision. So I would be in support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm in support as well. I appreciate Supervisor Kirk's comments. Really laid it out. The savings in the rent is huge. And, what we decide to do as far as the board moving or not, that comes out of the space needs. And so I'm good with all that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that's been said. One question I kind of had, you sort of went into this, but I just wanted additional clarification. So can you explain why adding an elevator to that building is so important? I'm presumably it relates to the Americans with Disabilities Act and the fact that we want to make that building accessible to people who have special needs and are not, that staircase is pretty tall and steep in there, and so not every member of the public would be able to get up to the higher floors. Is that part of the reason why we're looking at adding an elevator?
Correct. Well, I'm definitely not your chief building inspector to give you all of the legalities behind the why, but correct, it would definitely limit our ability. That first floor is the only floor which you can walk in, and that's coming in through the back. It definitely was not built with that in mind. We know that is an old building, and so yes, in order to maximize the use, and I'd have to find out if, because we're significantly changing use, if that also requires the elevator to put in, but it would definitely limit the use of it. For example, if we were to use it for board meetings and say your board decided you wanted, if we could make it work, say the courthouse to be in the old Department 1, which is on the top floor, we would not be able to do that without an elevator. So, but also to give absolute access to not only the public, but to employees who also might have a need. We need that elevator is critical component to for future operations.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps at all, but I can always, in the future, we can have Brian come in. He will be doing a walkthrough, and we'll be getting him more involved to tell us what else we might need to do and to accommodate. But the first one is that elevator, and we just don't know what that cost might be.
Yeah, and the reason why I just wanted to highlight a little bit about the finding ways to increase accessibility to the top floor and other floors in that building is that it's one of, if not the most historically significant and beautiful buildings in the county. And I really, looking at ways to make this as public facing as possible, the most interaction with the community can go through that building. It's one of the issues that we have with this building is that it's not, just by the nature of how it's laid out, it's not always easy for members of the public who've never been here before to find where they need to go. And whereas the courthouse, it's open, it would be much easier. So I'm like other supervisors said, I'm very in favor of it. I look forward to reading the space needs study to help kind of inform whether the ideas that I'm sure we all have are how feasible they are, and kind of narrow it down to what the best uses of that building are. And yeah, looking forward to saving some money on rent as we always are.
Okay, great, thank you. So we will begin on that process, and you won't be surprised when you see those RFPs issued. Thank you.
Okay, so are you looking for action from the board?
No, I'm just looking for direction. I
Okay.
just, again, normally we don't always come to you when we're going to issue RFPs, but this one is of such importance, and it will be very public. We want to make sure that we're going in the way that the board would desire us, that the actions that we're taking are supported by you.
Okay, and I wanted to make sure that we had opportunity for the public to chime in. Do we have anybody on? Okay. All right, so there's no public comment. Okay, so you have everything you need? Okay, thank you. So last I heard, we had pulled item 9. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so item 9 has been pulled. Okay, so I guess that concludes all of our regular business on the agenda, and so we will go into closed session. We have, I believe, 3 closed session items. And I'll look to the clerk. Could you please read those closed session items for us?
Closed session conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Authority Government Code, Section 54956.9 D1, Save Sawmill Mountain et al. Versus County of Tuolumne et al., Tuolumne County Superior Court, case number CV 63614. Number 11, closed session conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Authority Government Code, Section 54956.9 D1, Save Sawmill Flat et al. Versus County of Tuolumne et al., Tuolumne County Superior Court, case number CV 63579. Number 12, closed session conference with labor negotiators, Tracy Riggs, County Administrator, Eric Earhart, Assistant County Administrator, and Ann Fremd, Human Resources Director, Authority Government Code, Section 54957.6, all bargaining units.
Okay, is there any public comment on those closed session items? All right, getting the vigorous head shake there. Do we anticipate a report out? Okay. All right, so we'll go into closed session. Thank you very much, everyone.